In 2005, a little game dropped called Destroy All Humans. The game was phenomenal with its humor, destruction, and gameplay that I felt was pretty unique. I would just fly my saucer around for hours, blowing up buildings just to watch them crumble to the ground. In 2020, we saw a remake release, which, albeit had some content cut out of it, was pretty phenomenal overall. The visual upgrades alone to me were worth the price of admission. Now in 2022, we have a remake of the 2006 sequel, Destroy All Humans 2. As a kid, I didn't like the sequel as much as the original, but I went into this video with an open mind, and I hope that by the end of the video I'll have a different opinion. But before I get into the overview and review portion, I do want to thank THQ Nordic for providing the channel with a free key for review. Even though this was provided for free for review, all opinions in this video are my own, and nobody else is reviewing this or paying me after release. With all of that said, let's dig into it.
I made a few adjustments.
Destroy All Humans 2 released on October 17th, 2006 for the PlayStation 2 and Xbox. The remake, Destroy All Humans 2 Reprobed, released on August 30th, 2022 for the PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, as well as Windows, where I'll be playing it. The story picks up 10 years after the original, where Cryptosporidium has taken over the United States as president and the Furons are looking to expand globally. KGB intelligence knows that the White House has been compromised, and they also know about the package. Yeah, so for whatever reason, the Crypto from the first game has died off screen and he's been replaced with a clone that's been acting in his place. Basically, all you need to know at this point is that the package means that Crypto has male genitalia and can inject his DNA into humans. So, moving along, the Soviets see this as a threat and launch a nuclear missile at the Furon mothership that's floating just outside of Earth, killing the head of the Furon invasion, Orthopox. Pox uploaded his consciousness, however, so he's not gone in spirit, just in body. Anyways, the game from here on out has you seeking revenge on the KGB for destroying your mothership by working with the locals to rid them from their countries. One of these locals is a Soviet agent named Natalia, who is very well equipped. With this Crypto being the first to have the package, there's a never-ending onslaught of dick and sex jokes. If that's not something you can tolerate or think that's funny, then this isn't the game for you. I personally had mixed opinions regarding the comedy and the writing overall. The first game took place entirely inside of the United States. It's a big country with many different types of people that live here, so high school jocks and cheerleaders, city-dwelling valley girls, rural redneck farmers, and more were parodied in the original. I'm an American and I'm just more familiar with the sort of people that live here and the stereotypes that are associated with them. In Destroy All Humans 2, you'll start it in a parody of San Francisco called Bay City, which I found really funny with all of the hippies and their goofy names and aspirations of revolution. Afterwards, you then head to the UK, Japan, the USSR itself, and finally the moon. The other levels essentially boil down to the most basic of stereotypes. In the UK, they mention their teeth a lot, and your contact there wears a ruffled shirt under his bright blue suit like Austin Powers. In the USSR, they talk about communism and vodka and the revolution. It's all very played out to me at this point in time, but you get the idea. I do appreciate the developers for keeping most of the dialogue intact from the original, even if it hasn't aged all that well. Getting back to the levels themselves, 5 might not seem like much, especially when compared to the original game's 6, but they are much larger and have much more to do in them. Other than the main story missions, you have side missions the game calls odd jobs. These can be assassinations or ruining the lives of a specific target, as well as the Ark Voodoo cult storyline. While the first two are unrelated and are mostly a collection of one-off appearances, the Ark Voodoo questline is connected between missions. What's happening here is that you're essentially a cult leader and you're trying to bring followers to your Furon god Ark Voodoo. Usually these missions involve you recruiting new members to the cult, so you'll have to find an existing cult or gang and convince them to join you through legit or not so legit means. That leads me into the dialogue. There's quite a bit here and different options allow you to say different things. Usually the top option is the one that will allow you to progress, but I almost always selected one of the bottom answers just to hear Crypto spout off some nonsense.
So you're a secret agent, huh? 'Cause I got a package that needs delivering. Your eyes only, dig?
I have 3 knives hidden on my body, and I'm blindingly lethal with all of them. Now concentrate.
Ooh, I think I'm in love.
Sometimes though, the person on the other end of your conversation will get pretty peeved and you'll fail the mission, so just be aware of that. The game thankfully has mid-mission checkpoints however, so failing isn't always the worst thing that can happen to you. There's a bit of variety in the missions as well, but since the game is a bit grander in scale over the first, I found some of them to be a bit tedious as time went on. Any escort mission is just awful in this game, especially later on when you start fighting larger, more powerful enemies and you're expected to defend Natalia or whoever else. It was nice to not have to repeat the entire mission just because I died 3-4 3/4 of the way through it. Trust me, the original game did not have these, and replaying it for this video after playing the remake was brutal. On your quest to defeat the KGB, you'll have plenty of weapons and abilities at your disposal to get rid of your opponents with. Many of them return from the first game, like telekinesis and the anal probe, but there are new ones here and all of them are able to be upgraded. Starting with Crypto's abilities, Body Snatch allows you to take over the body of a human and act as though you are them. This makes for some super funny moments and was one of my favorite abilities, and to me is a hallmark of this series in general. Extract returns, which allows you to remove the brains of your victim. This can be upgraded to spread like a virus, which is a great tool when you're trying to control a crowd. Mind Flash allows you to stun your opponents, but I didn't really use this too much. Follow and Forget were also very situational. Follow just makes a human follow you, and Forget causes them to forget what they just saw, which is useful if you were just spotted in your alien form, but other than that, meh. Scan is a great one too. It allows you to listen in on the target's thoughts. For the most part, this is used to get mission critical information, but outside of this, it makes for some really funny moments, and where most of my downtime in Destroy All Humans 2 went towards. There are just so many different lines of dialogue for you to explore and experience that really serve no purpose outside of making you laugh. Moving on to the weapons, the Zap-O-Matic is your default weapon and is able to shoot out lightning with unlimited ammo. However, there is a cooldown period after firing for a while. The Anal Probe was a fun weapon. Not only does it cause your opponent to run away while holding their ass, it blows their head off in spectacular fashion. My personal favorite weapon was the Disintegrator Ray. It's essentially a fireball launcher that turns your opponents to dust. The Ion Detonator was another useful weapon. It shoots this ball out that you're able to detonate at your discretion and damage everything in its area of effect. These are all weapons from the first game, but Destroy All Humans 2 has added 5 new weapons. The first of which is the Free Love Goggles. In the original Destroy All Humans 2, this was merely one of Crypto's stock powers, but they've decided to turn it into a weapon. By scanning your enemies with this, you're able to distract them with the power of dance. It's silly, but if it works, it works. The Dislocator will bounce your target all over the place, especially if you allow it to get a full charge. I found this weapon to be really effective for crowd control when vehicles were around, since I could target the vehicle and have it bounce around and explode. Gastro is an interesting one in the sense that all you do is launch him and he acts like a personal defense drone. You can certainly target things with him, but I didn't feel like it was that effective, and I never really did that at all. Meteor Strike is one of the most powerful weapons in the game, and you have a targeting laser that you point at the ground, and once you've made your selection, a series of meteors drop from the sky and bomb the area. This is one of the few weapons Crypto has in his arsenal that's effective at taking out buildings and larger enemies. Lastly, you have the Burrow Beast. This weapon shoots out a piece of bait, and then some kind of animal will circle around it underground, waiting for prey to walk into the circle before striking and killing them in one hit. Now, the Burrow Beast is a bit of a pain in the ass to get. All of the weapons up until this point are unlocked through story progression, but not the Burrow Beast. This weapon not only requires you to complete the Arc Voodoo Cult questline, it also requires you to collect 30 alien artifacts that are thrown across to 5 levels. There's 10 in each level, so you don't have to collect them all, thankfully, but in my case, I couldn't unlock the final cult mission or the weapon to show you guys. I don't know if I did something wrong or if it bugged out, but I collected 38 artifacts and I still couldn't get the mission to pop up. It was a real pain, so you'll have to forgive me for showing footage of the original game instead. Crypto's abilities and weapons aren't the only arsenal you'll have access to, as your saucer also plays a vital role. The Death Ray is your first weapon and acts like a Zap-O-Matic, unlimited ammo, but has a cooldown period. Later on, you unlock the Sonic Boom, which fires out a shockwave and levels buildings in a few shots. You also have the Anti-Gravity Field, which lifts objects up the area of effect before dropping them down to their death. The most powerful weapon in the game is the Quantum Deconstructor, which fires off a thermonuclear bomb that implodes over time. It's the hardest weapon to find ammo for, so it's definitely worth it to conserve your ammo until you need to take on a large target. I briefly mentioned earlier that you're able to upgrade your abilities, weapons, and saucer, and I wanted to explain how that system works. So every mission you complete, including odd jobs, you're awarded Furotech upgrade points. You're also awarded bonus points for completing side objectives in your missions, so I would recommend completing all of these if possible. Most of them aren't too difficult. It can be something as simple as not touching water while traversing to an island, or using a certain weapon on certain types of enemies. Upgrade points can also be found thrown across every level in the game as a collectible. These points can be spent at Poxmart, which is accessible anytime from your saucer. These upgrades can give your default Zap-O-Matic chain lightning or make your Death Ray burn longer, for example. Upgrading Crypto is a little different though, and requires you to take advantage of the Gene Blender. In the Gene Blender, you'll be flying around a level in your saucer, abducting the required amount of people to get the upgrade you wish to buy. In the original, you needed to find specific genders of these types of people, but in the remake, they've gotten rid of this. So for example, in Bay City, you're tasked with finding KGB agents, and it's not always obvious where you might find them. If you play out the main story, however, you'll learn that they're hiding on the rock, which finding 20 of them at that point is really easy. You'll want to consistently upgrade as you play, since the game does ramp up in difficulty as you continue on. I didn't upgrade fully, and I did die quite a bit on the veteran difficulty, but I didn't find the game to be impossible to beat. The game took me about 13 hours to complete, which is crazy considering considering how short the first game is in comparison. I was able to 100% the original in about 11 hours, and I'm definitely going to go back into the second game and 100% it too after this video. My entire time with Destroy All Humans 2, I couldn't help but feel like the game was inferior to the first. That's not to say that the sequel was bad, it's just to say that the first game felt like more of a tight and concise experience. It felt more replayable due to the shorter length and more straightforward side objectives. In Destroy All Humans 1, you went to a level with basically 1 to 3 missions before moving on to the next. You did backtrack eventually to that level, but you were always in someplace new doing something else. When you weren't completing the Furon's takeover of America, you were participating in minigames like racing and my favorite, Armageddon. Armageddon had you flying around in your saucer, blowing up whatever you could, trying to get the high score. Destroy All Humans 2 doesn't really have any of this, instead going forward with a more traditional open world design where you speak to the mission giver, complete the mission, then come back to turn it in. It's really all up to personal preference, but I did prefer the first game's way of doing things. In this game, you're not really destroying all humans either, just the ones who cross you. I get it from a lore perspective, this Crypto having genitalia and the survival of the Furons and blah blah blah, but still, Crypto isn't here to just rule the humans, he's here to party. Switching gears a little bit, let's talk about the remake itself. Just look at these graphics, man. Look at the difference in fidelity here. Playing this on the PS2 for this video was brutal. The poor performance and the 4:3 aspect ratio made for a really clunky and slow game in my opinion. The remake has taken the original and planted it right into Unreal Engine 5 with amazing results. The difference in visual fidelity blows my mind with better textures, lighting, character models, and more. I love to just fly around and blow up buildings, watching the buildings crumble and sink to the ground in a cloud of smoke. That's not to say that the remake is perfect though. I experienced plenty of frustrating bugs and glitches on the PC. Some were small but jarring, like texture pop-in during scenes of dialogue, while others were really annoying, like the poor performance. I have an 8700K, 32 gigs of RAM, and an RTX 3080, yet I was struggling to hold 60 FPS on medium settings in scenes of chaos. I saw frame rates as low as 30 during these scenes, which, yeah, is far better than the original game chugging along, but still something that needs to be addressed. I'm sure it'll be patched in the future, but only time will tell. The first remake saw a fair amount of post-launch free content, so I'm expecting something similar here. The most controversial thing I'm seeing online regarding this game is the censored content, so I'd like to take a moment to talk about some of the differences I noticed. I played the original Destroy All Humans 2 for about 2 hours for this video, so I was able to get about halfway through the UK level before putting the controller down. I'm sure there are more changes later on, but these are the ones I noticed. Some content is expanded upon or changed entirely. For example, in Bay City, when you finally take on the leader of the hippies, you're sent into this drug-fueled land where a drawn-out boss fight ensues. In the original, you're quite literally just fighting inside of this square room underneath an overpass. This boss fight ended in one shot for me when I grabbed a barrel and tossed it into him. There's also a fight later on in the UK in the original when you're fighting this infected mutant human. The fight itself was easy, but the area you fought him in I felt was pretty small and narrow. In the remake, they've widened this room considerably where it looks like you're fighting inside of a laboratory instead of a hallway. This made the fight a bit more fair in that regard. Unfortunately, not all changes made to the remake are good in my opinion, and I want to dive into that. So for whatever reason, they've removed all of the dialogue from the black hippies in Bay City, so now they have the same speech and lines as the white hippies. In the original, the black hippies would say lines like this.
What if it's not that big? I haven't seen that many. Screw this vegan shit, Jack.
Don't push me, dude.
I'm getting me a New York strip. Man, I could really dig a shower. These white people are crazy.
I don't know why they cut him exactly. I thought they were hilarious. There are smaller cuts as well, like on the loading screens, you no longer see Crypto take off in a saucer and head to the next location. It's instead replaced with a JPEG and a swirling loading icon. I mean, these are nice and all, and I like how they're themed around each level, but it's just not the same. The biggest issue the internet seems to have regarding the changes in this remake is to the odd job titled Take It Like a Man. In this mission, you meet a man named Eddie who is considering a sex change, but he doesn't want to anger his wife in the process. Anyways, you body snatch Eddie and call his wife, letting her know the news. The gist is that Eddie has the sex change, but the wife is angered and leaves as a result. To me, again, I don't know why it was cut, and I didn't really find anything too offensive about it at all. It's a goofy game that parodies and makes fun of everything, so I thought it was pretty respectful in the grand scheme of the game. Granted, I'm not going to sit here and say one way or another if this should be or shouldn't be in the game. To me, it was a side mission, and I probably wouldn't have even noticed it was gone anyways. It's not a one-to 1-to-1 remake, but I feel that the overwhelming pros you get from a modern remake outweigh the cons of a missing side mission or some lines of dialogue. All things considered, I think Destroy Humans 2 Reprobed is worth your money. It's a mostly faithful recreation of the classic 2006 game with modern visuals, performance options, and tweaks to missions that mostly improve the experience. While I still feel that it's inferior to the first game, there's much fun to be had here, and I think it's worth your time. My only real reservation right now is the bugs and glitches. If these can get ironed out, it's an instant recommendation from me. And who knows, maybe we'll finally get a third game that doesn't suck. And now, with that said, I turn it over to you guys. Have you played Destroy All Humans or its sequels? What did you think of them? I'd love to read your replies. I try to read and respond to every YouTube comment posted. And with that said, let's roll the outro. Thank you all so much for watching, I really do appreciate it. I don't normally do modern game reviews, but man, does it feel good to do them from time to time. Anyways, this week I'm going to recommend my Red Dead Revolver and Manhunt videos. They're both videos that I'm very proud of, and I think that you'll enjoy them. As always, have a good one.